For Narungga and then Gunner.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Education. Can the Minister please update the House on action the government is taking to ensure all South Australian students have access to a world-class education system?
Minister.
So I'm very pleased to have this question from the member for Narungga, and the member for Narungga cares passionately about schools in his area and the futures of the young people in his area. I know this because he speaks to me about it very regularly, and he'll be very pleased, as will indeed students, families and schools in his area, to learn that the Yorktown Area School is in fact having its new fibre optic internet connection done this very week. And next week we'll be joined by the Port Broughton Area School and the Mallala Primary School, potentially too late for this year, but next year they will have access to the fastest internet in the country, along with so many of our other schools, because this year, sir, we have gone from the slowest internet in the mainland for our school system to, indeed, we're well on the way to being the fastest. 329 sites already connected. This is a project which we announced in the member for Morford's electorate at the Glenelg Primary School just at the end of last year, and it's already 61% complete. A wonderful $80 million partnership with Telstra to deliver the best internet infrastructure for our schools, which is a critical part of the school infrastructure that's needed. 150,000 students and 17,000 educators already benefiting from this. But it's, of course, not just the internet infrastructure, the capacity of the internet, which is so important for the 21st century. We also need our learning areas to be appropriate for the 21st century. And this government has record investment in school buildings and infrastructure, $1.3 billion on the books, $185 million in new announcements this year, partly to deal with Year 7 moving to high school, partly to deal with the significant capacity crunch hitting our public school system. For the last 5 years, we've had that big bubble coming into our public school system. It's about to hit our high schools, and the former government did all too little about it. Inadequate preparation, which has left us in a difficulty. But the investments being made by this government will benefit schools, communities and students. 3 new schools in Whyalla, in the northern suburbs of Adelaide and in the southern suburbs of Adelaide to meet that population demand. And of course, to address the long overdue demand for improved educational facilities in Whyalla. And of course, that also goes hand in hand with working with our partners in the non-government school sector, who, for the first time in the last 2 years, have benefited from investments in their capital by the state government. Like every other state, like the investments in other states has been for a number of years. And so far, we've had $11 million in investments in each of our first 2 years that will benefit students who are learning in those partner institutions. This is matched by record recurrent investment in our public school system. Record investment in the ongoing funding of our schools. The National School Funding Reform Agreement, in fact, required the state government to invest an extra $700 million in our public schools over the next decade to unlock the increased Commonwealth funds, which will also support our schools to meet the incredibly ambitious targets we have for school improvement in our schools, so that all of our schools can deliver all of our students a world-class education. That means every student, that means every classroom, that means every school in every town and in Adelaide, right across South Australia. How we spend that money is critically important. Last week we talked about the Year 1 phonics check and the dramatic improvement we've already seen in just 1 year in how we're rolling out phonics instruction in our classrooms and interventions for those students identified by the check as needing extra support. The Aboriginal education strategy, the language strategy, the music education strategy, our entrepreneurial schools, our 5 entrepreneurial schools which started their work this year. The incredible reforms to vocational education announced recently, and importantly, a complete rehabilitation of TAFE SA, which was left a rack and ruin by those opposite. And this year was re-accredited for 7 years, the highest re-accreditation that ASQA can do. We are doing the work that it takes to deliver our students a world-class education, and this government is turning it around for the kids of South Australia.